I've been delaying this video for long enough. This game was requested last year and I'm only getting to it now. What took me so long? If I had to tell you every reason for that, the video will be 10 hours long, so I think I'm just gonna skip that part. And with that being said, I just wanna say that today we are finally analyzing Need for Speed Carbon.
Hi everyone, as always Patrick here. If you're already subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications, otherwise YouTube won't tell you if I posted anything. If you are new to the channel, make sure you watch until the very end and consider subscribing if you like it.
Okay, Need for Speed Carbon. Let's start this off by talking about something that everyone knows. This game was made by Black Box and published by the one and only EA. Yay. Like I've said, this is something that everyone knows. Yeah, can we talk about the graphics now? For a game released in 2006, Need for Speed Carbon looks pretty good. However, I should quickly mention one important thing here. I am playing the PC version, which is based on the Xbox 360 version, in which some post-processing effects such as the blur effect applied on the street lights as seen on the PS3 version is missing. The motion blur effect also resembles the Xbox 360 version rather than the more subtle rendition seen on the PS3. The quality of the live action / pre-rendered cutscenes are also worse than the 7th gen console release counterparts. So basically I'm playing the slightly worse looking version of Carbon, but this doesn't change the fact that the game still looks pretty good. High quality textures, high quality car models, high quality effects. Everything is high quality in this game. But the best thing about the graphics is the atmosphere. The atmosphere of Carbon is very comparable to the Underground games. Both Carbon and Underground games have this brilliant looking night city. In Carbon it's Palmont City. It looks great, and since the game takes place at night, with all those street lights and lights from the buildings, it looks beautiful, especially for 2006. To prove my point, let's compare this game to other games that also came out in 2006. Toka Race Driver 3, Sprint Car Challenge, Unwheel, Flatout 2, Crash Day, Alarm for Cobra 11 Nitro, and of course my favorite game from 2006, Expand Rally Extreme. When you compare the graphics of those games to Carbon, you can easily tell that Carbon looks better than Toka Race Driver 3, Sprint Car Challenge, and Unwheel. It looks on par with games like Flatout and Crash Day, but it also looks worse than Expand Rally Extreme. Still, this is one of the best looking racing games of 2006. However, when it comes to the graphical options, things don't look so good. Graphical options the game gives you aren't bad, but they could have been done better. For example, the game does have anisotropic filtering, although that support is limited at best. There's anti-aliasing up to 4 times FSAA, there's VSync if you really need it, and there's no frame rate cap, so the gameplay is going to be smooth. There are 3 big problems with the graphical options though. First of all, the frame rate. Now, like I've said just a few seconds ago, there's no frame rate cap, so the gameplay is smooth. However, the facial captured animation seen on in-engine character models are capped at 30 FPS, and some elements are internally rendering at 60 FPS. Thankfully, there is a workaround for that. You can change the physics frame rate. This makes everything in the game smoother, such as the drift force being applied much smoother to the car. You can change this by installing a fan-made widescreen fix. How does that work? Well, that fix comes with a script or just scripts that you can mess around with. So, yeah. Another problem is the fact that the game doesn't support widescreen resolutions. By default, at least. Thankfully, the same widescreen fix I talked about few seconds before comes to the rescue. And the last problem, the most important one, there's no FOV slider. Thankfully, there is a workaround for this. All you have to do is download the NFS VLTED, extract the contents and open the application, click on File, Open and select the installation folder. On the left side, expand Camera Info and Default. Select the camera to modify, bumper, close, etc. On the right side, expand the FOV and change the value beside 0 to the desired FOV. For the hood camera, the value might have to be changed for each car individually. Then you have to click on File, Save to apply the changes, and there you go! You have changed the FOV. The game's stability also isn't the best. The game really likes to stutter on Windows 10, and it also really likes to crash during the challenge series. Thankfully, there are workarounds for that. I'll say this one last time. The widescreen fix comes to the rescue, and you can also play around with the compatibility mode. So the PC release of Carbon is an okay release. Just okay. It has a lot of problems that you have to fix manually, unfortunately. Thankfully, there are a lot of mods that can fix most of those problems, so you shouldn't worry about it too much. Man, it took me 8 minutes to talk about the graphics. Well, at least now, with that being done, with the graphics section being done, I can talk about the story. The story of Carbon isn't amazing by any means, but it's great enough for a racing game. Although Carbon is a direct sequel to Most Wanted 2005, you don't have to play Most Wanted 2005 to understand the story of Carbon, which is very convenient. The story of Carbon takes place shortly after the events of Most Wanted 2005. You are driving in a BMW M3 GTR and you are being chased by an unknown car. When you are being chased, you enter a construction site and then your car gets totaled, which means that that car that was chasing you now caught up to you. And it turns out you are being chased by Cross, one of the few antagonists of Need for Speed Most Wanted 2005. Cross is ready to arrest the player, but before he can do that, someone suddenly appears. That someone is Darius. It turns out you totaled your BMW M3 GTR in his territory. Darius helps the player get out of this situation somehow, and Cross backs off for some reason, And after that, Darius explains some things to the player. It turns out that the player owes Darius a lot of money, so now the player has to get money to pay off his debt. Also, Darius is dating Nikki, the player's ex-girlfriend. Why? Because the story needs to be more complicated. I'm going to stop myself there because if I say anything more about how the story goes, I will spoil too much. So I think it will be better if I just stop talking about the story. However, now I have few things to say about the tone of the story and the acting. The tone of the story in Carbon is both cheesy and serious. It's cheesy because of some of the lines like "I'm the monkey" line by Neville and the Kenji line "I don't know what's more pathetic, your crew or your car," and other lines like that. However, the story of Carbon isn't as cheesy as the one from Most Wanted 2005. And let's be honest, the story in Most Wanted 2005 was incredibly cheesy. Carbon, on the other hand, is a lot more serious. The story takes itself pretty seriously, but not too seriously. Most characters talk to you like you're a legitimate threat to them. However, not every character is like that. Kenji doesn't take you seriously at all. As a matter of fact, not a single boss in the game takes you seriously, but most of the characters take you seriously and they seem to respect you. The acting really shows it. Even some of the cheesy characters take something seriously. I gotta say that I really like it. I really like the combination of the cheesiness and the seriousness. I like the fact that the acting portrays it as such. The characters are well written and the story is surprisingly engaging for a racing game. But I think I've said everything I needed to say about the story. So now it's time to talk about the gameplay. And I'm just going to say this. We have finally reached the fun part of the video. Need for Speed Carbon strongly follows Need for Speed Most Wanted 2005 formula, but I'm not going to talk about that formula right now. Why? Because if you know me, first I have to talk about the handling, the physics, and all the other stuff like that. Sorry, that's how I always do my analysis videos. But don't worry, I will talk about that formula later in the video. Let's start with the damage model. The damage model in Need for Speed Carbon is nothing special. In fact, I actually think that Need for Speed Most Wanted 2005 had a better damage model. When you crash your car, you can see the dents, scratches, and some sort of deformation. Car windows can also shatter, but somehow it still looks worse than Most Wanted 2005. As a matter of fact, the entire damage model looks worse than Most Wanted 2005. I find it ironic, really. Carbon looks better than Most Wanted graphically in every single way, yet a lot of things related to the damage model look worse than Most Wanted 2005. It's pretty funny actually. The main takeaway from this section is this. The damage model in Carbon is still good, but it's inferior to Most Wanted 2005. Now let's talk about the physics. The physics are really good in Carbon. The cars stick to the ground and the downforce is decent. Of course, the downforce can be improved by installing spoilers. The handling is also grippy and great. it didn't feel slidey and it didn't feel twitchy either. I don't know what else can I say about the physics really, since they can always be changed depending on what upgrades you buy for your car. But wait a minute, shouldn't that affect the handling more? Yes, but it also has effect on the physics. Plus, at this point I think everyone reviewed this game, so there's nothing more I can add to that. Like, everything I say in this video has been said before or was said before, and most people probably said it better than I did, so just keep that in mind. With that being said, let's talk about the handling. Now this is a tricky one. Tricky because it correlates with the cars. I will still try to do my best to explain this to you. Carbon has 3 different car classes. You can choose them when you start the career mode. The car classes are exotics, tuners, and muscle cars. All of those car classes are different from each other, and that includes the handling. To make things more confusing, all cars handle differently. But how big is the difference? Well, it's pretty big. Exotic cars have the highest top speeds, muscle cars have the quickest acceleration, and the tuners have the best handling. As you can see by my footage, I chose the tuners because they have the best handling. And the game shows it, the handling is really good. But it's not all great though. The handling during drift events is more slidey than grippy, but it still feels great. Is it unrealistic? Yeah, sure, but it doesn't change the fact that it still feels great. Again, I'm pretty sure that everyone has explained how the handling feels better than I can. All I'm gonna say is when you play the game, choose a car class that you're most comfortable with. Let me give you a quick rundown, even though I did that quick rundown like a few minutes ago, but I'm gonna do it again. Exotic cars are the highest performing vehicles but are the most difficult to master. Muscle cars are the fastest accelerating vehicles at the expense of top speed and handling. And the tuners are the most have the most responsive handling and greatest amount of grip at the expense of top speed. So like I've said just a few seconds ago, choose a car class that you're most comfortable with. For me, I am most comfortable with the tuners, and that's what I chose. Now of course you don't have to do the same thing that I did, and you can completely ignore the tuners, you can choose something else. Or maybe if you do want to be like me, you can choose the tuners and ignore everything else. The choice is yours. The handling is great, and yeah, that's about it when it comes to that handling. I guess now I can talk about cars and tracks. When it comes to the cars, I feel like I don't need to say anything because everyone knows what I'm going to say. Well, I think. So instead I'll just say one more thing about those cars and then I'll move on. Need for Speed Carbon is the first Need for Speed title to feature a large quantity of classic American muscle cars. The garage can be filled up with 6 cars independent of tier and design class. This number limit excludes pink slips rewards from bosses, which means the player can have up to 9 cars if the 3 bosses' cars were awarded. All cars are categorized in performance tiers and car classes. Tier 1 being the bad cars, Tier 2 being the moderate cars, and Tier 3 are the best cars in the game, pretty much. Look, I really don't like repeating myself, and I'm pretty sure a lot of you don't like it too, but I'm just going to say this one more time, and hopefully this is the last time I say this. Go back a few minutes when I talk about the handling, then go a few minutes after that to when I talk about the cars, and then you will get the picture of what I was trying to say. Yeah, I need to move on from this now. Let's talk about the tracks. And also about the progression and event types, because those are also tied to the tracks. Let's start with the progression first. The career mode is centered around the fictional Palmen city setting, which is made up of 4 distinctive districts and the surrounding canyons. Each district is occupied by several rivaling crews that the players must take on with their own crew. Players will take over a district after challenging and defeating a crew boss, from whom they may also select boss bonus cards that contain bonus rewards. Territories that were successfully gained by players may also be randomly attacked by smaller crews. What does that have to do with the tracks? You'll find out in just a second. For now, let's talk about the event types. There are a lot of event types in Need for Speed Carbon. Let's go through them quickly one by one. There are circuit events, lab-based circuit races, there's sprint, point-to-point races, canyon duo, distance-based 2-player mode, speed trap, speed-focused sprint races, checkpoint race, time-limited checkpoint races, drift, drifting-focused circuit races, canyon drift, drifting-focused sprint races, pursuit, open world police chases, and the free roam challenge, random encounter sprint races. There are also 2 more event types that are exclusive to the multiplayer, but in this video I am only talking about the single player experience, so I'm just going to ignore those 2 modes. As for the tracks themselves, most of them take place in Palmen City, as I've said earlier. There are 2 exceptions to that rule, however. Drift races, since they are taking place on tracks that are designed specifically for those events. Sorry for that huge stutter there. And the canyon racers, because the canyon races take place on a canyon. It's pretty obvious. Almost every track in this game is very well designed, and I mean very, very well designed. There are some tracks that are worse than others, but they're not bad. They're just worse. I don't think I have encountered a single bad track in this game. That's an achievement if you ask me. Those tracks have everything you can possibly ask for. Long straights, normal turns, easy turns, sharp turns, pursuit breakers, and more. Again, I don't know what more can I say about those tracks. They are just really, really good. As you've probably noticed by now, I've had a lot of positive things to say about this game. And guess what? I have even more positive things to say about this game. But this time I'm going to talk about things I like the most about this game. Despite the fact that the game looks like a rehash of Most Wanted 2005 because they use the same engine, this game introduced a lot of great features, a lot of which are inherited by following games. Canyons. Canyons are executed very well. It can be presumed that this game rode on the hype of the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift and the initial D-series. darker color schemes compared to Underground 2, destructible guardrails, and ominous soundtrack made by Trevor Morris. All of this makes driving in canyons very thrilling and engaging. The game also introduced a new game mode called Canyon Duel, where in the first turn you must chase your opponent's car, and in the second turn the opponent chases you and you must stay ahead of them and reach the finish line before your score hits 0. Another great thing that I didn't talk about, surprisingly, is the crew system. The crew system is a system, I know, very original, where your crew will do certain actions to help you in the race. Some will find shortcuts in the track, while others will crash into other racers in the race. Also, they have secondary features. For example, Nikki reduces car purchase costs by 10%, while Yumi reduces upgrade costs by 10%. Crew races also have their exclusive dynamic soundtrack, also made by Trevor Morris. Also, if I can add to this real quick, there are 3 types of crew members: drafters, blockers, and scouts. Scouts find shortcuts for you. Drafters allow you they get in front of you and then you can draft and gain extra speed. And blockers attack other racers, which means that you get to pass them and probably also win the race. So I have to say, I really like this system. It gives the game something new, something fresh, something that stands out from other games in the series. Another thing that I love, like legitimately love about this game, is the fact that the starting path and the order of the career mode, as well as the unlocks, will depend on the player's starting choice. For example, if the player chooses the exotic career, Alfa Romeo Brera, they will start their career in Fortuna, which is an exotic cars dominated territory, and exotic supercars will be unlocked faster and earlier. I love this. But why do I love this so much? Let's put it this way. I picked tuners and I completed the game using tuner cars. And I want to play a game, so I want to pick a different car. For example, I pick exotics, you know, the Alfa Romeo Brera. And like I've said just a few seconds ago, the career mode changes. And you can do this 2 more times. So you can have 3 different playthroughs of this game. This is really good because this gives the game a lot of free playability. And if you know me, you know that I love replayability, and I also love finding new ways to play the game. So that's why I love this so much. You know, I'm surprised that I didn't talk about customization. I've been talking for 28 minutes now and I never talked about it. So it's time to talk about this. Performance customization is greatly improved compared to previous games. Now you can tune individual parts of the cars like engine, transmission, suspension, nitrous, tires, brakes, and turbo/supercharger. Auto Sculpt is introduced, a feature where you can alter the shape of the front bumper, rear bumper, side skirts, spoilers, rims, and even increase or decrease the size of exhaust tips. Paints and vinyl customization are also largely improved. Now you can pick colors from the spectrum instead of just some fixed colors, which is actually a feature from Underground 2 that got cut for some reason. Also, a lot more paint types are introduced. Vinyls are also freely movable and deformable instead of just some fixed presets like previous titles. Need for Speed Carbon also has an expanded car list with most of the cars from Most Wanted 2005 either returns or are updated to newer models. Most notably, Nissan returns after being cut from Most Wanted. Despite not being realistic, drift races in this game are extremely fun and satisfying. Another thing I like about Carbon is this bonus mode that the game has called the Challenge Series. The Challenge Series puts the player into various events of a certain type and difficulty level. Unlike Need for Speed Most Wanted 2005, players may start with any event type, although they are restricted to bronze tier events first. After winning gold tier events, players will receive new aftermarket parts and cars if they are playing on the collector's edition release. The challenge series is also greatly improved from Most Wanted 2005. Despite being shorter, it now features all kinds of race modes, making it much less repetitive. Carbon also introduced rewards cards, an assignment-based system where completing all 4 in a group unlocks a certain stuff. This makes this game's endgame session much more fun, as in Most Wanted 2005, the only endgame thing to do is farming pursuit milestones, which is repetitive, while in this game you get to do so many more things. The game also has an impressive licensed soundtrack just like in previous games. The soundtrack plays depending on the player's car class. For example, hip-hop grime for the exotic supercars, rock for American muscle cars, and electronic for JDM import tuners. As you can tell, I really like all of those things and I really like Carbon. I also need to give a quick honorable mention to the territory control system. I really like this system, not just as an idea but also how well it was executed. I really like how it is tied to the main progression as well. You take over territories and you try to become the best racer in Palmont City. Other crews can also attack your territory, and if you're not careful, you will lose that territory, so you also need to be careful. It's really dynamic, and I really love this system for that. Yeah, I think I've made it obvious. I really love Carbon. But as much as I love Carbon, there are also some bad qualities I have to talk about, so let's talk about them. First of all, the idea of different car classes sounds cool on paper, but it was so exaggerated that the cars are both unrealistic and unbalanced. For example, tuners are super underpowered when it comes to the speed, and exotics become lumps of lead that accelerate very slowly and often refuse to turn. Even the famously agile Lotus Elise 111R suffers from this. Muscle cars turn out to be extremely useful in most situations if one can handle them properly. This next bad quality is a bit hard to explain. Although this game retains all the pursuit mechanics in Most Wanted 2005, or from Most Wanted 2005, cops are totally irrelevant except doing certain missions, or when doing certain missions. Plus, some important numbers, for example fines, infractions and total bounty, don't show anywhere. Players who haven't played Most Wanted 2005 can expect to be confused. And speaking of Most Wanted 2005, if you get a game over at any point during the career, and the game over in this game means all your cars are impounded. You have to restart the entire campaign from the very beginning. As you would expect from a black box game, some opponents have rubber band AI, though this is more balanced than in the prequel. However, cops do actually have noticeable rubber band AI compared to Most Wanted. Rubber banding from crew members varies wildly. This can be both productive and counterproductive. Some cars in Carbon, like the Chevrolet Camaro concept, can only be driven in quick race mode or are impossible to unlock despite having hidden price tags. However, they can be made unlockable and usable in career mode through modding. But now it's time to talk about the two big bad qualities of the game. The first bad quality is related to the canyon duels. Like I've said before, the canyon duels are great because they're fun, exciting and engaging. My problem with them is that the game doesn't explain the rules of them very well. When I got to my first boss, Kenji, in my case, I just didn't know what I was doing wrong. Well, when I got to the canyon duel, I was trying to outrun Kenji, basically, in the first round. Oh, my bad, I was supposed to stay behind him this whole time because you're actually supposed to win in the second round. Like, it's not a big deal, but I think just a small explanation about this could have been great, or would have been great. This is why I got kinda stuck on the first boss, because I just didn't know what I was doing. Thankfully, when I was rivaling other bosses, I didn't have this problem because I knew what I was supposed to do. But it really goes to show how a little bit of explanation can do so much for the player. Normally I would show this since I actually have footage of this, but I actually don't want to show this because the footage is rather embarrassing. However, it's time to talk about the worst quality of the game. And the worst quality of the game is the fact that this game is really short. You can complete this game in just a few hours if you are really good and you know what you're doing. It's a real shame because this game actually left me wanting more. In conclusion, I love Carbon. I've had an amazing experience with the game and I definitely recommend this game to everybody. Go buy it and go play it. Oh wait, you can't buy the game because it's not available on any digital stores. The game used to be on Origin, but now you can't buy it because EA took it down. Thanks EA! Physical collector's copies were used to activate on Origin, but now they no longer do. Again, thanks EA! The only way you can get the game nowadays is to get yourself a physical copy. And as you all know by now, PC players don't really like physical copies anymore. As a matter of fact, most PC gamers don't even have optical drives at this point. So, I don't know, I guess you can always think of some way to make this, to find the game. I don't know. I hope you can find a way to get the game nowadays. But when you do get the game, you can play it. Well, kind of. The game has the save disk DRM, which doesn't work on modern version of Windows. So yeah, I hope you also can find a workaround for this DRM. But if you actually manage to get the game and you bypass that DRM, you can play the game. And I can personally guarantee you that you will have a lot of fun with the game. Now, as for my ranking for Need for Speed games, I know I didn't analyze every single game, but I can tell you right now, it's one of my top 4 Need for Speed games. Can you guess which place Carbon takes on this top 4 list? If you do know, please let me know in the comments down below. Also, I've delayed this video for long enough. I'm glad it's finally done, and I'm glad you can enjoy it. I'm pretty sure there are some things I could have done better with this video, but at the end of the day, is it really that important right now? I will always think of some way of improving my content, as slow as as unnoticeable as it may seem, but I do actually want to improve my content. So yeah, subscribe for better content, I guess. No, just subscribe. Leave a like, leave a nice comment, and subscribe. Yes, I know, I'm making this video way too long, but let's be honest, this video is already like 40 minutes long. So yeah, all I'm going to say is, the game is amazing. If you can, go buy it, and if you know how workarounds work, go play the game. You will love it. I can personally guarantee you that.
But that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to say in this analysis video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Just